friends, we are beginning with our new paper CC 510 History of English Language today. You are now in the last year of your graduation and the whole world has suffered a lot of trauma during last 3-4 months. But as it is said, this time will also pass away. So with that positive note, we begin with our paper. In this paper, as per our discussion in the last lecture, there are 3 topics in the first unit directly related to origin and development of English language, its history, its characteristics. So the first topic in the first unit is descent of English language. Now, descent of English language focuses on logical arguments of different linguists about the origin of different languages in the world, and it will narrow down to the origin of English language itself. But before we begin with that systematic study of origin and development of English language, we need to talk about some presumed theories of development of any language in the world, and then only we can proceed with the development of different particular languages and English language in particular. So, if we take up the word language, now what is a language or what is the use of a language? You will find it on the screen that language is a medium of expression. And why do we need language? In order to communicate our thoughts and feelings to other human beings. Among human beings, a language is a must. Language may be different from person to person, but there must be a language that can help these two human beings come to a plane, come to a level and communicate with each other. Language is something that God has blessed the human beings with, because it is the only attribute that differs from all other animal kinds on the planet. This attribute distinguishes a human being from all other animals. As we find number of animals around, they communicate with each other, but their way of communication is not like human beings, as we find in human beings a systematic use of language. No. What do these animals do? They use their cries, their sounds, their roars and different kinds of sounds which help them to communicate with the animal of their own species. And they express their feelings. We don't mean to say that animals don't have any feelings. They do have, but they don't have any particular or very specific way of expression of those feelings. They have limited ways of expression, and therefore they don't have any developed regular language like human beings. One more thing, it's not that animals go on changing the sounds with the passage of time for the communication. No. But if we take up the development of a human language, we find a number of changes coming into it with the passage of time. And human being goes on modifying, developing the language with every new day. So human being is a very creative as far as the language is concerned. There are a number of ways of expressing one thing. there are a number of structures and patterns of sentences to express the thought, and all these things a human being can do easily. Now, how to trace the origin of this human language? We are putting the idea about the language of animals aside, because even up till now the animals haven't developed or any different new form of language for their expression, whereas among human beings we find that there are thousands of languages in the world. So how to trace the origin of human language? Where did the human language originate first time? And how old this human language is? This human language can be, this is a pure logic and reason, that whenever a human being came into existence, it used to communicate with the people of human race, and it might have used one or the other kind of language. So how old human language is? We can say human language is as old as humanity, because it has got its birth from the day when human beings were born on this earth, and it will survive up to the time human beings survive on this planet earth. Second thing, language is primarily spoken and not written. Now, what do we mean by this? When we see a child growing from his cradle to infant days to the days of his or her childhood, we find him first using certain words of our mother tongue. Then the child starts making some small sentences. Then it will make some larger sentences. It will have some develop some different ways of expression for different things. But when will a child write a word or a letter on a piece of paper or a slate? It takes a lot of time. And same is the case with any human language in the history. Any human language came into existence first in the spoken form, and after maybe hundreds or thousands of years, it might have taken its written form. So written form always comes upward in the course of time. A language is born with its spoken form, and gradually after hundreds and hundreds of years it takes its written form. So language initially existed only in its spoken or oral form, and it was kept alive by its speech community who spoke it. Because sometimes some intelligent person will have an idea, how did this language survive if it did not have any spoken form? It did not have any written form. Yes, we have witnessed a number of poems, lyrics, and sometimes epics surviving through the ages only in their oral form. Now, language is something that we use in our day-to-day usage. So the language survived in its oral form even though it did not have any written form. And these speech communities just handed over the language to their children, to their offsprings, to their coming generations, and that is how the language survived. Later on, with the passage of time, with the development of technology, we find that printing technology came into existence, then printing press came into existence, and a number of new developments were created. So all the languages, almost all the languages got its written form, and this printing and writing made rapid development of all the languages. So this is just a logic, just a reason. Now, what do we understand about the uh, condition of language in the flux of time? As I told you earlier, language is never static. So it may have a written form, may not have a written form, but a language is always going to change with the passage of time. So it is always in the state of a flux. It goes on changing. A number of changes come into practice in a language. We can say it is evolutionary in character and not static. The same thing that I told you earlier. It continually undergoes semantical, phonetical, morphological and grammatical changes. Now there are 4 different words and almost we can say hard to tackle for you, but I would make you understand. Semantical changes. Semantical means the changes are related with meaning. There are some words, there are some phrases where we, or rather we can say the human beings in the earlier generations, they used to use those words with a particular meaning. But with the passage of time, those words lost their original meaning, or maybe they maintained their original meaning, but along with that they developed a new meaning. So this is, I am talking about one word, but this has happened with words or maybe phrases and many other things. So this is what happens in a language with the passage of time. Some words, some phrases, some usages, they change or they add to their meaning. Then second one is phonetical. Phonetical is basically from the word phonetics. Now what is phonetics? Phonetics is a scientific study of sound. So it deals with pronunciation of certain words or words in English language or any language. But these pronunciations also undergo a number of changes with the passage of time. Then third one is morphological change. Now as I have put it into brackets, related to form and structure of words. So morphology deals with the spellings of words, the structures of words, maybe larger structures used in a language. So these kind of morphological changes also take place in a language, and at last grammatical changes. You will find a number of grammatical changes in our language with the passage of time. So these are normal characteristics, or this is, I would say, normal behavior of our language in the world. It may be with any language. A survey from the language of Chaucer, as we find in the Middle Ages and towards Elizabethan age, to our modern English shows changes in grammatical structure, in the shape of words, in the meaning of words, and also in pronunciation. So take for example the Chaucerian time, the language of the Chaucerian time. We study that language, and if we study the language of our own times, modern times, then we find number of changes. The changes can be witnessed in grammatical structure, in the shape of words, in the inflections of words. Inflections are letters which are attached to a word to indicate a different sense, in the meaning of words, and also in pronunciation. So this is what proves that a language always undergoes semantical, phonetical, morphological and grammatical changes. Therefore, a language, so long as it is spoken, continues to change. And how long will it continue to be spoken? Till the time the community that survives till the time the community continues to use that language. So language cannot cease to be uh, spoken till a community is surviving. And if a language cannot cease to be spoken, then language cannot cease to be changed. It ceases to change only when it ceases to be spoken. And when does it stop to be spoken? Only when the human community is destroyed or wiped out, or maybe the language is completely shut off. So this is not possible. Then we move ahead with another slide. Language is known as the normal, natural and enduring method of expressing the human mind. Now, as we have discussed in the first slide, language is a medium of expression. Now, what does a human being express? A human being expresses his thoughts. Where do these thoughts take place or occur? In the human mind. So, language is known as the normal, natural and enduring method of expressing human mind. It is in a normal way, natural way, human being expresses his thoughts, expresses his mind, and that expression can only be possible with a language. Among the many living forms of human speech, the English language, which is now spread over the whole world, is as humble and obscure in its origin as any other language. So, there is no need to talk about this language or that language. But as we are students of English language, we need to be concerned about the origin and development of English language. There are a number of living forms of human speech that we know. The English language, which is now spread over the whole world, it is called an international language. It is spread over the almost, we can say, whole of the world. But this language is as humble, as modest and obscure, because it is obscure in its origin. Nobody can pinpoint where this language originated. It is difficult to understand logically the reason or the point of time of the origin of English language or any other language. But different linguists and different scientists, different anthropologists, they have presumed certain theories of development of human language in general. I am not talking about only English language. I am talking about human language in general. There are 4 different theories that attempt to suggest the origin of the language or speech. And the names of these 4 theories are Bow Wow theory, Ding Dong theory, Pooh Pooh theory, and gesture theory. So we need to discuss all these 4 theories in detail and see how far we can rely on them for the development of human language. The first theory among these 4 theories is Bow Wow theory. It is assumed that in the earliest speech, man used characteristic sounds of the creature or an object he was referring to. During those ancient times, there was no established vocabulary for the animals or objects which used to move around the people in the jungles. There was no civilized society, and therefore these people used to address the animals or the objects or the situations with their specific characteristic sounds. As we notice nowadays, a child speaks of a dog as a bow wow. Why does a child not name the animal as a dog? Because the child knows that animal through its characteristic sound, that is of barking, and that is why the child calls it a bow or bow wow. Similarly, the child imitates the speech habits of his adults like ancestors in prehistoric times. We see that sometimes a child who has just started uttering certain sounds or words, it tries to imitate only those words which strike its ears. It doesn't know the meaning of those sounds. It only copies the sounds. And this used to be the method of knowing or addressing the things, animals, or situations during those prehistoric times by the ancestors of mankind. Imitation of sounds of animals or inanimate objects was a routine process, and that used to help them communicate with the people of their society or the people around. It would be difficult to call it a society because there was no civilized society, and society without civilization cannot be called a society. We listen to some words, or if we focus on certain words, we'll understand that the sounds of those words are powerful enough to convey their own meaning. For example, the words like snake, wind, puff, whine, wail, whistle, babble, etc. have onomatopoeic effect, which indicates its meaning. By onomatopoeic effect, I mean to say that the uttering of that particular word is such, the sound of that particular word is such that you automatically derive the meaning of that word. But this theory can work for a certain number of words in the language, because if we test each and every animal, each and every situation or object with this theory, we feel that this theory doesn't fulfill all the requirements. Therefore, it is difficult to carry it to its ultimate results, and we cannot rely fully on bow wow theory for the development of a human language. The next theory that some anthropologists and linguists have advocated is mockingly called the ding-dong theory. This theory was advocated by German scholar Max Muller. As per this theory, the language has originated in the sense of rhythm innate in man and relating him to the rest of the universe, which is rhythmical. So according to these scholars, the whole world is connected with each other, or different parts of the world, different objects, animate and inanimate, are connected with each other through a rhythmic process. Focus on imitation of movement and not sound. In the earlier theory, we saw that the focus was mainly on the characteristic sound of an animal or an object. But as per this theory, the focus is mainly on the rhythm of a particular animal, rhythm of a particular object, animate or inanimate, and they believe that this rhythmic following can later on be developed into a full-fledged language. This theory is based on man's tendency to imitate not sounds but movements in nature. According to the scholars, man has a habit of copying the rhythm of different animate or inanimate objects, and this ability to copy, ability to follow the rhythm of these animate or inanimate objects can lead to making a language. According to Butcher, another anthropologist, the most primitive form of speech was a sort of simple rhythmical hum or chant, keeping time with the step in walking or with the hand at work. Generally, when we walk or when we do some work at a continuous pace, then we follow a rhythm. Even while walking, even while dancing or doing anything, we follow a rhythm. And Butcher believes that this rhythm during the primitive times helped them carry out their duties or fulfill their or finish their communication. This theory may sound true but hard to state it intelligibly, because as we saw that in the earlier theory, similarly in Ding Dong theory too, we don't feel that this theory can lead us to the making of or developing of a full-fledged theory, full-fledged language rather. So this theory also does not fulfill all the requirements of a language. The third theory is Pooh-Pooh theory. This theory traces back to emotional interjections of pain, surprise, pleasure, wonder, etc. While studying grammar, we have heard this word interjection. Now, what is an interjection? Interjection is a kind of sound. It may not have any particular meaning, but this sound is used by a human being to express certain feelings, certain emotions, and those emotions can be of pain, surprise, pleasure, wonder. Sometimes we, in order to express disgust or contempt, we blow out a gust of air, and at that time the sound that comes out of our mouth is poo. Now this poo is exclamation of this contempt or disgust. Now as per these scholars, this theory of exclamations or interjections could be, or this habit of interjections could be developed into a language, into a refined form of language. They believed that repeated use of such exclamations gives a meaning to it, and it goes into making a language. It may look easier on the surface, but if we think of all the intricacies of language, then we can easily understand that interjections of some limited feelings or emotions cannot be developed into a full-fledged language fulfilling all the requirements for communication. So once again, like the earlier two theories, this theory, Pooh-Pooh theory, also seems to be falling short in its result of developing into a full-fledged language. The last theory in the list is a gesture theory. Now William Wundt is the main exponent, and along with him Sir Richard Paget. These two people, in Paget's book Human Speech, the theory, they introduced the theory gesture theory. According to these two scholars, the primitives used hand gestures to convey their ideas. Now, conveying ideas or communicating with somebody with the help of certain gestures may be through your eyes, maybe through your hands, maybe through your lips, eyebrows, etc. And it's becoming successful is in practice even today. Such gestures are still employed by us, and especially while dealing with the deaf or with a person whose language is unknown to us. There may be two different persons, both may be educated in their respective languages, but if they don't share a common language, then they are just like primitive people, and they have to use some language to come to a plane, come to a single bridge, and that language is of gestures. With the help of gestures, they can communicate with each other and they can get their things or their ideas conveyed to each other. The gesture is always accompanied by a corresponding movement of vocal organs, or lips, or jaws, or eyes. While a person is gesturing something to somebody else, at that time it is not just gestures, but along with those gestures, some sound or some features of your face, they play some role, and these combination of gestures and your features, that conveys a perfect meaning. Thus, man is supposed to have passed from sign language to spoken language with the passage of time. Sir Percy Nunn says that while uttering I and me, Sir Percy Nunn gives some example that when you utter a sound I, or when you utter a word me, at that time the lips of the speaker are drawn towards himself, and in saying you or thou is an older version of you, the movement is towards the person addressed. So when you are using some sound I or me, or when you are using some word you or thou, at that time the features are also supporting those sounds. So in a way, the words or the sounds are supported with some gestures. So this proves that there is more possibility of gesture theory developing into a full-fledged language. Lifting arm to point upwards in accompanied by tip of the tongue raising towards the top or palate. When somebody lifts his or her arm and points upwards, at that time the hand is doing its work, but the tongue which is there in the mouth, it also stretches towards the palate. Now this is a supportive gesture. Even gestures are used to support the efforts of our tongue. So in a way, we can say that gesture theory is somewhat nearer to making a full-fledged language. But it also has certain unsolved questions, and therefore none of these four theory can fully be relied upon as the base for the development of a human language. Of course, all the four theories are doing their bit and supporting a little bit in the making of a human language. So we come to the conclusion, still we cannot claim that we have arrived at the truth regarding the origin of language. Though there is some quantum of truth in each of the theories, it is hard to trace how the language originated. I hope you have understood this question. You all have my number, and you can call me whenever you wish if you want any clarification on this question. All the best. Prepare yourself or rather understand this question, because there are rare chances of this question being asked in an examination. But this question is this topic is necessary for the preparation of platform from where we can start our topic of descent of English language. We'll see that question in our next lecture. Thank you.